Coming up today on Locked On Texas Tech, word to Brian Fantana, feels like day 100 of Coach Watch. What the hell's going on out here? We're also talking Juicy J, not that one.
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We're going to start this thing off right. Raider! Everything runs through Lubbock.
Great to be with you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network. Always appreciate being your first listen on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts with the only Chris Level. I'm Casey Cowan, and we are kicking off a new week, Chris, as we anticipate closing in on 0 hour as it relates to Texas Tech's men's basketball head coaching search. Man, this has been a bizarre one to behold, Chris, for kind of two reasons on different ends of the spectrum, at least for me personally. Curious to hear from you on your perspective here. But you've gotten to a position where within this search, it almost seems like you identified maybe a favorite or a very short list of favorites. And it sounds like you've had very fruitful conversations with that favorite, that being Grant McCasland. We've talked about this on the show for the last week and a half or two. Current head coach at North Texas. So that part of it almost seems like, man, you got to that pretty quickly and got it kind of taken care of. But now we've been in this NIT holding pattern as Coach McCasland's team is still alive in the NIT. Playing Tuesday night, so depending on resolution, I guess, one way or another, maybe that's where we near 0 hour. But been kind of strange to me, Chris, because you got a target. You've had apparently conversations that have yielded progress, but then you've had this weight on the other end as that team continues to play. And I don't know that I've taken in a coaching search that's included all of the above. Am I fair in the way I'm describing what's taking place so far?
Yeah, I think Grant was in this thing from the beginning, as we kind of had talked about, because there's so many ties he's kind of got to Texas Tech, Lubbock, and Big 12. And I think that the timing made sense on him being a candidate because his team is winning. They've nearly won 30 games this year. He's got head coaching experience and all that. And I do think they probably talked to whether heavily or just kind of reaching out, engaging interest. I'd be willing to bet that there was another 6 to 8 other individuals. But I think Grant fit into that mix. And I just think he's kind of the guy that made the most sense. And so I think that you get something this week. That's my thought. I would caution that anybody suggesting done deal, he's the next guy. I mean, until you get an announcement, until he stands up there in front of a microphone in Lubbock, I would just, but I do think you're in this lull right now where it's pretty apparent that he's trying to get through his team's season, okay? And they play tomorrow night at 6:00 in Vegas against Wisconsin, the semifinal game of the NIT. And if they win that, they would play Thursday night for the NIT championship. If they lose that, their season is over with. And so then at that point, you can kind of start to get some closure, and everybody can start talking publicly about what may go on here. But until that game tomorrow night, we're just kind of sitting here and waiting. Well,
in that part of it, Chris, I'll admit, just for me on a personal front, gets me puckered up pretty tight. The nerves don't end because I work personally in a contract business. I'm not a real estate agent. I'm a realtor. It's trademarked. There's a big, big difference. And as I sit here, I just think in that kind of business, and I'm sure in all kinds of various contract-related businesses out there for Locked On Texas Tech viewers or listeners, time passing before you've seen something signed or like publicly proclaimed is a scary thing. And there are all these things out there about time is the greatest enemy of a deal or an agreement or a handshake or a verbal agreement, whatever it might be. And so that part of it, I've heard from Texas Tech fans. There have been Locked On Texas Tech viewers who have commented on YouTube about this. That part of it, I think, has left all of us a little anxious. And it may just be, again, personal bias or things related to my own life. I don't know. Maybe that's set on more concrete footing as far as any potential agreements, set on more concrete footing than we might anticipate. But it just kind of being out there, sort of vaguely in the ether, just makes me nervous, man. And I think it's just almost wholly related to what I do day to day from a contract perspective, because I know we've probably all in different walks seen things like that fall apart, where at one point on Monday, you felt like, all right, this is a deal that's going to happen. And then maybe by Wednesday, if there hasn't been really something tangible produced, things could always change, right? So I understand from some perspectives out there I've heard from, and certainly from my own, why this like standby pattern has led to some anxiety, I think, for a lot of Tech fans, and maybe some leadership as well, as they're trying to get this deal done.
Yeah, and I'd be willing to bet that because it's been so quiet. Look, there was some rumors out there Friday, end of last week, that there was progress made, then deal struck, however you read it, whatever it actually said, and then the candidate here that we're discussing had backed out. He wasn't going to do this. There was all this out there. It was on the internet and on RedRaidersports.com and other places, the old Twitters and all that stuff. But then everybody quickly pivoted. Look, I would be willing to tell you that it's been so quiet over the weekend on this front that I think all parties are comfortable with the situation. Otherwise, you would have heard more, I think. And I can't say that there's a signed document or anything like that. I just think that everybody's trying to be very respectful of the other in trying to, because if you're Texas Tech and Grant McCasland is your guy and he says, I want to do this, but I want to be respectful to my team and where I'm at and all that, just give me these days. If you're Texas Tech, you have to respect that or abide by it. I mean, it's kind of, again, if he's the choice, and I believe that he is. So, and
Chris, you're always recruiting 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
This job, next job, whatever. And so I think a lot of the ways that you could be handling this, and maybe not so much Texas Tech, but Grant McCasland himself, I mean, it's part of his pitch to any prospective player. He may be bringing he may be bringing two. I mean, a year from now, stuff like this will be on the resume, right? So I get wanting to be on the up and up in that fashion. You're selling yourself at all times.
I think it does, right, wrong, or indifferent, as we talked about the other day. That this says a lot about who he is, because I think, look, if he's going to be the next head coach here, do I think he spent some time thinking or figuring out what needs to be done when he were to take over? I absolutely do. I think, but I just think he's trying to handle it the right way, the respectful way, and I think he's. It's not about recruiting as much as it is trying to recruit a staff. I mean, it's all kinds of recruiting that are about to take place if and when he is named the head coach. But I would just say this: I'll be very surprised if we don't get an official announcement and a press conference by the end of this week. Now, I'm not guaranteeing that, and again, nothing is done until it is done. But I would just think that we'll know a lot more after tomorrow night or possibly Thursday night. That's just, and these hours and days feel glacially slow just because, I mean, and we're not even really in it. Okay. Imagine if you're waiting for the phone to ring because your livelihood, and whether, speaking of realtor, if you need to call one and put your house on the market because you're not going to stay here, or you need to call somebody like yourself, a realtor, and you need to purchase one because you're moving here. I mean, those are livelihoods.
Hit me up.
Yeah, that's right. That's
Coach
right.
Adams, Coach McCasland, sell, buy, trade, swap. Considering interesting trades always. Yeah, man. I mean, there's just so many different levers to work here to try and line it up in the right way. And we've got ball game Tuesday night. And is the NIT championship game Friday or Thursday? Is that
Thursday
I think
night?
It's Thursday.
Yeah,
right?
Thursday night. So Wednesday morning or Friday morning, those are your sweet spots there. But I just don't think it would be, if this is indeed Grant McCasland, it won't be anything later than Friday morning. just because at that point there is no more basketball to be played. Only, crazy as this sounds, only Florida Atlantic, UConn, Miami, and San Diego State will still be playing basketball, like we all thought and predicted
in
our
the
fancy
NIT
little
correct?
bracket pools. Yeah,
You're
I mean,
talking about the
it looks
NIT.
like an NIT bracket. I mean, like if
It looks
you
like
know,
a preseason tournament kickoff or
that
whatever,
too.
out in Atlantis or something.
Yes, yeah, you're right. Just wild, man. The sport is absolutely wild.
Chris, this has been we can pivot away for a moment before we get to Texas Tech football and your new wide receivers coach. But first, today's episode brought to you by Built Bar. The Built March Madness bracket has arrived. I know you got your favorite bar or puff, and now's your time to make it count. Go to builtmarchmadness.com to vote for your favorite and maybe be a winner in the process. I'm voting for that churro, baby. Team Churro 2023. Let me know where you're at builtmarchmadness.com. When you vote for your favorite bar or puff, you're going to be entered into a drawing where 50 lucky Locked On listeners will get a free box of Built. And not only that, but one Locked On fan is going to get a 12-month subscription to Built to have Built's best bars or puffs delivered monthly straight to your doorstep. You can't beat that. You got to try Built right now. If you haven't before, Built is the best protein bar ever. For real. So amazing. You're not even going to think they're good for you. What makes Built bars and puffs so good? For starters, all high in protein, low in sugar, covered in 100% real chocolate. That's right. Real chocolate. So run to builtmarchmadness.com right now to vote for your favorite bar or puff, churro like me, or go your own way and pick up a box while you're there. You can vote every day in March. So hop in and support your pick at builtmarchmadness.com. We can pivot away for a moment before we get to Texas Tech football and your new wide receivers coach. But I kind of feel like this tournament experience has been a real glass of cold water to your sleeping face if you are still groggy and not paying attention to what's happening within college athletics, how the transfer portal and name, image, and likeness monetization rights are impacting specifically college basketball. We've always known that basketball, say baseball, a little bit different. And my bad, not mentioning baseball today. I don't know why. I just didn't get it on the list for this episode. You think about those sports as much different than football. Like there's great basketball players all over the country, great coaches all over the country. They move up, they move down, but never like they're moving now. Never before like they're moving now, and with potential monetization on the other end. And I don't know exactly how that applies to the future of Tech or Grant McCaslin or whoever it might be, if it's not him, but we think it will be. I don't know how that applies here necessarily, Chris, but it does just give you some indication, at least it did to me, and I don't want to overstate it, but that things have really, really changed because, and I don't even know that it's so much the NIL stuff. Maybe it's just the ease of player movement. I'm not so sure maybe what you attribute it to, but this field that we've got set here in the Final Four, and I'm all here for it. I don't care about brand names or blue bloods necessarily. Some might, but I just think is really giving you a reminder, if you needed one, that this is not your granddaddy's field of student athletes, coaches, and teams that are tipping it off here. And it's only going, I think, to change to a more extreme degree until maybe there's some tapping of the brakes, ease of movement wise for the student athletes. But don't you kind of feel like this has been on display here for anybody that wants to pay attention, that we're going to see more of this kind of thing? I don't think this is a one-off where you get maybe some you didn't expect competing for hardware.
Yeah, P equals P. Portal equals parity. I mean, and I think you're seeing that more. I thought
you're going chemistry on me. I was getting so scared all of a sudden to be in the biology lab. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, terrible. Bunsen burners and beakers and just smoke.
That's why we're on a Peter podcast.
Yeah, and you got those big old clear goggles and everything.
Yeah, the Code Blue station was always fun. Give everybody a laugh, douse your eyes, whatever.
Yeah,
they didn't like that though.
But I mean, because who San Diego State looks like? They look like you from last year. They're just old. They grinded on defense. They're not real glamorous. They just got this coach that has got this identity and all that. And but I just think you have a couple of NIL examples. I mean, it just the painful thing is watching, and we've touched on this a little bit, but University of Miami. Nigel Pack, obviously, it was well documented. It came from Kansas State. It was a hefty price tag that came with that. It was very public. And there was a few others that had some NIL opportunities, but the one player on their team, and he was kind of factored into to the very end of the game against Texas. Thought he was going to get called for the over the back call, but turned out it was a foul on Brock Cunningham. But he hits a couple of free throws, gets a steal, and all that. Was his Norshad O'Meara, who played at Arkansas State prior to University of Miami, was on your campus last year on a visit, wanted to come here. And I think that there were some preferences made. Okay, I guess we'd rather have Fardaws, or if Fardaws comes here, we can't get this guy. Or, I mean, I'm like, why not both? But the guy's like been a double monster. But it just shows you how quickly you can change the outlook of your team, And
True.
I think prime example. San Diego State is a team that we just sat here and talked about. Well, Friday night, I guess it was, they beat up on the number 1 overall seed in the country, which was Alabama, and some very highly touted freshmen and all that. And it just looked like a bunch of men versus boys. And these are, we talked about the tech dynamic of all the young kids and all that, but these were like 6'9", 6'10" type freshmen. These were McDonald's All-American type guys, and San Diego State just rolled their sleeves up and beat the, out of them. And I thought it was just men versus boys. And I think that's to me, man, that's just the way to go. I just don't think that you're going to, you're going to wow people with a bunch of freshmen over the years. Not that you shouldn't take any, but I just think if you can get old, stay old, and mature, which is there's a big difference there, and mature.
True.
I just like your chances. But I think that this Final Four, because last year it was Duke, Carolina, Kansas, and Villanova. Blue blood, blue blood, blue blood, blue blood. Now,
Yeah.
UConn this year, I would put it semi in that category. They've won 4 titles since 99. If they win this year, that's 5. They absolutely belong in any conversation you're having with whatever. But, Florida Atlantic and San Diego State and Miami, not exactly in that category, but it's fascinating. It's fascinating for the sport.
We talked about it on Friday, right? Like pursuing high school athletes. How do you build a team now? And is there 10 high school athletes that can go to a tough league and compete immediately? Is there 5? I don't know, but there ain't many. And I guess that's one part of this, Chris. I didn't really anticipate as far as the NIL or transfer portal impact was the total makeover, I guess, as to what would make for a good college basketball team. I remember back, I guess this is in the Pat Knight era, when we were really getting into one and done city across the nation. And I remember so often it being, noted how old, some of the guys are for tech. You got these seniors. Here's a 5th-year guy. Here's this guy. And I'm thinking, no wonder we stink. Guys don't hang around if they're any good in college basketball. Everybody that's doing anything is young. They've got, these flash guys that may be here for a year or less, whatever. And now I guess a decade and a half removed or so from that, it's like flipped back the other way where you're thinking, no, you need gray hair on your roster actually to compete for a national championship or for a conference championship.
1,000%. I think you nailed it. I mean, Jay Crockett's around here were really good. They just weren't like NBA level good. But I think Jay is the prime example of kind of what you talked about. He wasn't an NBA guy, but he was. If you'd have had like 4 or 5 Jay Crockett's, you would have made some serious noise. But you just had the one. But your point still stands. I mean, think about it. This year in the Big 12, Grady Dick, Keontae George are going to be 2 freshmen that will go be basically lottery picks. Other than your freshmen on your roster, give me the long list of freshmen in the Big 12 that really, 1, played a bunch, and then 2, had any kind of impact. I mean, I could give you those 2, the one from Kansas, the one from Baylor, but it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. The San Diego State model, I think, is something that I think Iowa State kind of looked like this. Certainly, Kansas State looked like this. So anyway, I just think that is certainly the way to go. And problem is there's going to be a lot of teams kind of doing that, trying to. That's why it was so bizarre to me that you went one way last year and completely different this year. I just didn't. You won 27 games a year ago in the Sweet 16, and I just had a hard time understanding or comprehending it. But again, not my call.
Well, and that's the other aspect that we hadn't even had a chance to get to yet. When you do actually hire the head coach, we begin to explore what's his philosophy, what's his approach, how does he want to build a team, what does he want it to look like, whether that's age or any other factor. So hopefully, maybe by this time next week, we're beginning to have those conversations because you possibly have hired a head coach by then. Stick with us this week. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube so you miss nothing as we root. Yeah, I think against North Texas. I wouldn't have minded you losing like a week or two. It's kind of weird when you're wanting a coach to be like, all right, see you guys get smoked so we can have your coach. It's kind of a bit of a conflicting feeling there, but I guess at this point, what's the difference? You're already here this week. Maybe you just want them to win the whole thing. I have no idea. I just want Texas Tech to have a basketball coach, as I think most of us do, and maybe they will within the week. So make sure you're subscribed on YouTube so you don't miss reaction whenever that does go down right here on Locked On Texas Tech. Or switching gears before we're out of here. Coming up next, we're getting back to Red Raider football. Let's hear from the new wide receivers coach. What's he got in his positional room? What's he looking for guys that he wants to add to that receiver positional group? We'll hear from Juice Johnson next on Locked On Texas Tech. But first, today's episode brought to you by America's #1 sportsbook, FanDuel. And with the NCAA tournament on and popping right now is the perfect time to get busy, get signed up, and get started with FanDuel. And right now, new customers are in a prime spot to be on the receiving end of that no sweat first bet. We're talking up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet don't bank, baby. $1,000. So just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon and sign up today to claim your no sweat first bet. Then you can lay it all on the line on everything from the money line to point spreads, which team is cutting down the nets, all on an app that's safe, secure, super easy to use, even if you're a first timer. So don't miss your shot at the no sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you join FanDuel today. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up and make every moment more with FanDuel. Great to be with you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network with Chris Level. I'm Casey Cowan. Thanks for making us your first listen on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. Want to turn the page before we're out of here on this episode and visit Joey McGuire's Red Raider football program. Spring camp is going down and had an opportunity to hear from a new face within the program. One of the more interesting changes this offseason involved the departure of now former wide receivers coach Emmett Jones, who is now in Norman, Oklahoma in a similar capacity. You bring a guy by the name of Juice Johnson to Lubbock, familiarity with Coach McGuire. He comes by way of Waco, Texas most recently, but obviously some other stops prior to that as well. Has definitely got a presence, Chris. And I think whenever you see someone identified so quickly by your head coach, if you like your head coach, well, you want to like that guy. And it seemed like this was a very, very quick connection, I say, from the outside looking in between Coach McGuire and Coach Johnson whenever you had to replace your wide receivers coach. So an interesting addition, to say the least, and was glad to have an opportunity to hear from Coach Johnson as he talked about his group of wide receivers. Was an interesting group last year, Chris, but for my money's worth, I think a little bit disappointing, underwhelming, and the biggest problem to me was the inconsistency, because we know you've got potential. We know that there are guys there with potential, had some bad luck injury-wise that kind of rolled into that, but looking for improvement from 22 to 23. Let's take a listen to Coach Johnson talking about what he looks for in a wide receiver, some of those that maybe could be added to that room down the line. And he also turns to some of what he does feel like is in the room amongst the guys you got right now. Here is Juice Johnson.
Always in general, wide receiver traits, you're going to have some different things. I talk to the guys all the time that everybody possesses a dominant trait. So Dre might be a fast guy, JB might be a big guy, Miles might be a twitchy guy, right? Everybody is going to have a different trait that they possess, right? One not better than the other, but we just talk about exercising that dominant trait all the time. And so I just want them, whatever their dominant trait is, just exercise that dominant trait all the time when they step on the field and be the best version of themselves. I don't need Miles to be JB. I don't need JB to be anybody else he isn't. I don't need Loic to be anybody else he isn't. I need everybody to be the best version of themselves.
And it didn't used to be this way, but when everybody started running spread offenses and you had multiple, not just two outside receivers, okay, and you had 3 and 4 wide receiver sets, wide receiver groups, they all now look like a basketball team, okay, and what I mean by that is you've got small, medium, and large, and you've got guys that could be point guard. You've got guys that could be kind of like the wing guy, and then you've got the post player, and they're all, some are faster, and like what he's talking about there. So it's kind of fascinating when you think about the groups that you see employed this day and age compared to the way it used to be. Like when we were watching the Cowboys, it was Michael Irvin, Alvin Harper, KD, and they're both 6'1", 6'2", 6'3", both taller guys. Then we kind of got introduced with slot guys and all that. And but I think right now you've got Sparkman, and you've got Loic, and you've got Jerron Bradley, and then you've got the Dre McCrays, and you've got Miles Price, you've got Coy Aiken and Brady Boyd, who I think is missing the spring. You've got there's all different kind of shapes and skill sets here, and I think it's kind of fascinating. But last year was about the injury bug and his consistency, I think, as you mentioned. And I think Dre McCray helps the speed component. He helps the playmaking component. I think he takes some pressure off of guys like Jerron Bradley and specifically Miles Price, because I think Miles Price has a little more like not all the focus isn't on him from being the hey, they're going to hand it to him on a jet sweep or get it to him on a bubble screen, or he doesn't have to feel the pressure of trying to make all the plays. And then I think Dre McCray actually takes some pressure off of Zach Kittley too, because he's going to be one of these guys that I think can take a 40-yarder and go 70 with it, or get past the defense and you hit a 65-yard pass play. And so Zach Kittley is like, well, this is easy calling plays with this guy. Like, I don't have to come up with an 8 to 12 play drive like that. Those 2 plays, that'll work. I can save the rest of this stuff on my call sheet. But I love the coach, man. This is a guy that he played at Houston, but he also was a GA for Cliff back at A&M. So he's got a lot of familiarity with what Cliff's principles are, which is essentially what Zach has employed here, and then he's tweaked it and morphed it. But natural fit, and I think you nailed it, man. When Joey calls him and there's a deal done, less than a day later, yes, I will do it. Yes, I'll move my family there. We're in. I think it tells you a lot about the candidate and the head coach and what they thought about each other.
Yeah, was there any other call? I mean, was that the first?
I don't think so. Yeah, I think that
quickly.
was one, and he was 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 on the list. But luckily I think, again, remember, if we go back to when all this went down, I think this is somebody that Joey was interested in from the get-go when he first got this job here. But I think Zach had a previous relationship with Emmett Jones, and I think Tech stepped up big time to buy Emmett Jones out of his contract at Kansas. And so I think that's why there was some – I don't think it necessarily went over very well on him kind of bailing out and going to Oklahoma. But I think, you have landed on your feet and then some with Coach Johnson. Great fit.
Yeah, excited to see what that group can become in 23. And Miles Price is such an interesting component to this, Chris, because obviously had some bad luck from an injury standpoint a season ago. But
yes,
he essentially last year, production-wise, had the exact same season that he did the year prior, around 500 yards receiving, had about 12, 13 more receptions on the year than he did going back to 21. But I know that's not the season he wanted to have. We all expected him to take that next step to really be a guy that was, I don't know, doubling that kind of production or getting closer to maybe being a 1,000-yard kind of guy, and it could hardly ever get off the ground. And I know, look, your O-line stunk, so your offense was not going to be great. And I'm not one of those statistically that gives a damn about much of that if the points are not mirroring something that resembles winning offense. But when you're roughed up in the trenches, obviously that impacts everything: quarterback, running back, wide receivers. But the wide receiver group last year, I just felt like was up and down, kind of all over the map. You didn't see Fungi take some big step. You didn't, in my opinion, really see like Sparkman take some big step. Bradley is the guy that I want to see take the biggest step. And to me, he gave you the biggest flashes last year. And there were some periods in the season where maybe there was like a few weeks stacked together for him, but sometimes it felt like every other week. I don't know what needs to happen to take that next step and be more consistent and impactful as a group. Again, I want to be fair and saying I know it's got to start up front for all the guys on the offensive side of the football. But I feel like there's potential there, Chris, but I was underwhelmed and disappointed last year with eventually what you were getting out of some of those guys. And maybe I am understating the impact of Miles Price just being in and out. And because I know not only like production-wise, but emotionally, spiritually, the guy that maybe is going to get that positional group going was Miles Price. And if he's in a windsuit, he can't have the same impact that he would in a pair of pads. But that was one of the groups from last year that I'm really looking at heading into a new season. Obviously, they got a new coach and thinking, all right, can you guys take advantage of the potential that we think is there? Am I being too harsh, or how did you kind of judge what you expected from them last season and then what the reality turned out to be?
Yeah, and I think it's part of the problem too was no quarterback continuity. I mean, like you got timing, chemistry, trying to focus on different things in the offense, whatever this quarterback was could major in and all that, because obviously we had 3 different starters last year, and I think that's while they are all going to say, hey man, we don't care who the quarterback is. I know my job. I know the plays I'm supposed to run. I know this and that. I mean, it just doesn't necessarily work like that.
No, because the play breaks down sometimes. And
yes.
Feel.
Yeah. Chemistry. Chemistry and timing and comfort level and all that stuff. That so I think one compounds the other. So, one of the first things is you mentioned being better up front, but just quarterback health and consistency there, I think, helps out the wide receivers as well.
Hand in hand, right? Why was the quarterback? Why were 3 used? Because they were broken in half at various times.
Absolutely, but it's fair for guys like Bradley and Price and Loic. I think those are 3 guys that have been around here for a bit, and I think it's fair. I think they would tell you the same thing. It's time for me to take a next step. My team needs it, and I think that's very fair. Now, I don't think they all need to have 1,000-yard seasons for you to be successful in offense, but I think that being healthy, being available, being consistent, I think those are all fair asks, and I think that they've again, they're kind of and that's what's fascinating is like with Coach Johnson, everybody's immediately asking him about Dre McCray, because that's what we all do in the springtime. You focus on what's new. You've seen a lot, last season, but like, what are the new pieces here? I want to know about the new guy.
Right.
Well, they're all new to him. Okay. They're all new to him. And so he doesn't know. He's watched film. He knows who's been here, but he's not coached any of these guys. Knows Miles Price from high school connections and things like that. But I think that in a way that would be good for these receivers to kind of hit the reset button and kind of reestablish yourself, because they're having to – there's nothing that's going to be given to them. They're having to earn it. And with that earning something, it's like typically coaches go with the most consistent guy. So it's not so bad that, that they have a new position coach, because I think that'll play well. But we'll see. But I directly link that to a lot of the quarterback health and some of just the lack of continuity at that position, and trying to tweak the offense from week to week on whatever that quarterback could basically focus on. But I know this: you're faster, you're older, and I think you're healthier. So let's hope it stays that way.
And by the way, Bradley finishes with about 260, 30-plus catches and 2 TDs in the last 2 games. So the final memory of him is a great one, and hopefully he can build off of that heading into 2023. And sorry if the expectations are too high. Well, look around at where you're playing. We have become accustomed over the years to impactful, not just wide receivers, but wide receiver groups. You just jogged my memory. I mean, just randomly, Chris, when you're talking about, they don't all have to have 1,000 yards. And I was thinking, yeah, but sorry if I want you to blame Joe Filani, Robert Johnson, and Jarrett Hicks for being on the field at the same time. I mean, we really got spoiled in some of those years gone by. I don't know if they ever went 3 1,000-yard receivers, but they definitely in some of those seasons were going 2 1,000-yard receivers, right? I mean, that was like almost a given.
I think you had I'm trying to remember Darren, even recently, like in the early 2010s, you had Darren Moore and maybe it was Eric Ward. Both had 1,000 yards on the outside.
It can be done.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, because I'll never forget Tommy Maynard, Carlos Maynard's son, and Carlos Maynard, one of the best guys that's ever come through this program and brilliant football coach. But his son Tommy was the outside receivers coach, and it was on Tuberville's staff, and he's the outside receivers coach. He's got 2 1,000-yard receivers. Hard to be better than that when you're the coach. It's like I think my guys are good, folks, and yet Tommy Tuberville wanted to go to Cincinnati, and so the whole thing kind of fell apart here. And I'm thinking this is a cruel profession because here this guy is this outside receivers coach. He's done the job to the epitome of what you're supposed to do and gotten production, got good kids. And then he's sitting there looking like, okay, what's my next move? I was like, this is not fair.
Carlos Maynard, revered and beloved in Red Raider circles, I know, but Tommy Maynard always going to be revered and beloved in this Red Raider circle because I believe he was the bridge Jakeem Grant crossed to become a Red Raider. Was he not? From Tulsa to Texas Tech, I think?
Yep. And he says to me, after that happens and they talk about the recruitment and everything, and he's like, I grew up going to games around here, and I grew up, being around Tyrone Thurman and all that. And he's like, that's who this kid was. Not only was he wrong about that, he was really wrong because Jakeem Grant, I think, was a lot better than Tyrone Thurman, and I would have told you. Like if he could be any close to, and that's not taking anything away from Tyrone Thurman, but Jakeem Grant, but he got hurt recently, but this is somebody that was NFL guy. This is somebody that was getting paid well to do this. And I just think he's a college highlight film. So anyway, but I think there's some Dre McCray comparisons there a little bit. Miles Price also kind of in that, but they've got to go prove it now.
Those two guys on the field at the same time. I mean, if Dre McCray can live up to some opportunity, they'd be that'd be kind of fun. But back to Grant, it jogs another memory of just one of the most interesting combinations personnel wise I think anybody's ever thrown out on the field, which was the Grande-esque Jay Samaro and the diminutive-esque Jakeem Grant as your two inside guys. That was quite a sight to see, and highly versatile, highly effective. So would love to see something versatile or otherwise be highly effective under Coach Johnson in 2023. Looking forward to that getting off and running. And, of course, we'll have plenty more from spring football camp here this week as we also wait with bated breath for resolution on a men's basketball coaching front. We'll be here for you whenever that happens, so make sure you're subscribed on YouTube so you miss nothing. Chris, enjoyed the time and the perspectives as always, man. Thanks.
Thank you, Coach Cowan. Enjoy the rest of the week. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Happy Monday to you. Happy NIT. Happy Final Four, whatever you're into, and keep hope alive, people.
Never been more into the NIT than I am this year, and I'm actually thinking about turning on a game this week. I may even just.
I will definitely do it.
Game, but it just crossing the radar at all is like a totally new experience. But either way, we are nearing, we believe, resolution. All right. For Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan. Again, subscribe on YouTube so you never miss an episode. Thanks for making us your first listen each day, and we hope for your second listen, you'll check out Locked On College Basketball right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your one-stop college hoops shop on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. That's Locked On College Basketball for your second listen. For Chris, I'm Casey. We'll see you for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.